Hi, and welcome to Boom, It's on the Blockchain. My name is Alistair Caithness, and today I'm just going to bring in our co-host, Garrett. How you doing, Garrett?
Good. How are you doing today, Alistair?
Good, good. Back to virtual world. Garrett and I got to see each other in person on Friday in sunny San Diego, and now we're back to the virtual world of the Zoom world, as people like to call it, you know. But today we've got a special guest in Garrett, so I'm just going to bring him in straight away. Friend of mine, his name is Brandon Palma. Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Greetings, Alistair. Greetings, Garrett. I'm doing well. Happy to be on the show.
Great. So we'll just kick off with the show today, and then just provide a bit of background for the viewers. Then, Brandon.
Sure. So, greetings, viewers. My name is Brandon Palma. I own my own creative agency called If They Create, and currently have a few art-focused NFT projects that I'm involved with. That I'm also involved mainly in the cannabis sector with my creative agency.
Yeah, so we actually met on a train traveling from San Diego to LA during the lockdown. It was like one of my first trips away, and then we were all masked up. We had to separate and stuff like that. And then I was actually flying back to Scotland, and Brandon was going to LA, and then we just started chatting, and then that's how we got to know each other. So it was interesting stuff. So, but you've been involved in the cannabis industry for a number of years. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you did in the cannabis industry, first of all, Brandon.
Absolutely. Just to give you a quick short story history of my experience. So about 11 years ago, I was living in Seattle, Washington, and Seattle, Washington at the time was coming medical to recreational state. Was getting all of that in place. And so as medical started expanding and getting in place, I actually was approached with a team to be part of creating a publication that would do advertising for the local market, for the medical dispensaries. And so as a graphic designer and publication designer, was approached by a few financiers and, who eventually become the owners to create a publication and start the name, the branding, and doing the design, doing all the creative heavy lifting, heavy work, up to getting it to the printers to print a publication. That publication, I ended up branding it Dope Magazine, and that was launched in August of 2011. The long story short there was that the magazine had about almost 7-year run. In 2018, it was purchased by High Times Corporation for $11.2 million, all the brand and its assets, and that's where it's currently at. So it's a brand that, I feel a few can say that, something they created in the cannabis space is now part of one of the most recognized household cannabis weed names out there. And so it's been, I feel creatively, from starting a brand from just being a, very enthusiastic, cannabis centric creative in a sense already on my own, to really taking that energy and, looking to be the heart of the movement, and the vibrational heart, rather than, the, other focuses. And so I felt taking that spirit and energy into my work, and really exuding that into the presentation, from the publication to the ad designs, really helped propel the band to, places, in a really short time. I think also too that, cannabis was just expanding really fast, and it was just a really good timing. to get things going. And so, yeah, that's the quick short story of the long story in the cannabis world.
3 minutes of your life basically to sum
Yeah.
everything up. But but that's pretty amazing. It's for people to think about the industry sector itself. It's in the US, it's worth approximately somewhere between I think $25 billion now.
Yes.
And by 2030, they're looking at over $40 billion. So if you think about the NFT market space in the US right now, that's sitting at what, $15 billion, something like that. That's what it's like going. So the cannabis industry in itself, it's sort of intertwining with this new technology. And what we spoke about before on part of that train ride was how people in the cannabis industry, because it's a new up and coming industry that's actually exploding across the States and across the world as well. Canada, it's fully legal in other places as well. So it's a huge industry for every country out there. So many countries out there that do not legalize cannabis right now, which seems to be absolutely crazy. If you go into the history of why cannabis became illegal, it's like prohibition. Cannabis wasn't illegal going back in time, people. It only became illegal, in the 1930s, 1920s, something like that, when it first became illegal.
It was the 20th century thing for sure. But it's interesting as it's opened up and become legal. I mean, it seems to be there's about 4 different flavors in the U.S. for cannabis legality, and in Texas, it's still completely illegal. It's like people calling up their friends. Everybody smokes, but it's like people still calling their friends or whatever, getting it like that. But I remember in Minnesota, where I'm originally from, I haven't smoked in years. I haven't drank in years, but a couple of years ago, I had a medical card there, and they would only do oil. That was all they would do.
Wow.
And now they've just opened it up to flower, so that's like a big step forward. And so there's that kind of flavor of medical, and then it seems to be the Florida kind where it's like, hey, they have a little bit of everything, but it's still in the boring white plastic jars where it's the same logo and everything. And then I'd say there's really 2 flavors of legal too. I remember when Uncle Ike's started in Seattle, that was like the first, like, hey, this is like a store. It's like a liquor store, and you can walk in, you can just buy this stuff. But then, I'm on a road trip probably 3 or 4 months ago, well, maybe longer than that. But my friends brought me to Cookies in San Diego. I'm like, I don't smoke anymore, but I'm just looking around and I'm like, wow, like they put a lot into the advertising here. And that's guys like you, putting in that little extra elbow grease to make the place look beautiful. So
yeah, in terms of flavors in Amsterdam, if you go into one of the coffee shops there's usually more than 2 flavors there, but 50 different flavors.
Many flavors of weed. Every single.
I'm only joking. So it's
absolutely.
But the UK, it's still illegal. It's like in the UK, it's still illegal. So there's a country there, and I sat on a panel at it was the Southern California's Investors Week, and it was Montel Williams. So Montel Williams, the TV host, amazing guy, amazing life, that guy. It's just like, used to be in the, it was a Marine, Navy SEAL. So, and he could speak fluent Russian, fluent Chinese, like, just like speaking there. Obviously, he's probably a spy back in the day or doing something, stationed out in Southeast Asia for 50 years.
Well, with Montel, that's what I know him from. Or
you just
they were saying that he was Tupac after facial reconstruction. Like Tupac's not an island; he's just Montel Williams.
Well, anyway, he's got a CBD company, and then when he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and this is whereby the cannabis industry, from the medical perspective, is he was diagnosed with MS, so he started taking opioids to help him. And then in his story, he said as he started to take the opioids, he went to see his doctor because he was feeling other pains, and basically one of his lungs sort of collapsed. And then he said his kidney was going down. So suddenly, because of opioids, his organs are starting to shut down. And his doctor basically told him, if you don't get off these opioids, you're going to be dead basically in less than 6 months. So he basically had to biohack himself, and then he started researching more and more about cannabis and pulling at the CBD side of things. And then he's obviously got the massive company now. And then what his company's trying to do is trying to replace opioids with cannabinoids, and taking the sort of elements out of it to match what's in the opioids, so you can actually get the same benefit without the addictiveness of this. It's like an amazing story that's actually happening. And he's actually, and I got to sit next to him during lunch as well. I've got a picture next to Montel Williams, one of my favorites. But it was an amazing story when he told his background of like why that had to happen. And then again, he said he was in New York. He had it was an apartment, one of the top floors. And then he just, because of what was happening, and obviously the guy's like a genius, like just basically converted his apartment into like a lab. And then he, with the whole thing, and he's trying to pull out different extracts of cannabis. And one room's a grow room, one room was like he's pulling these extracts, one room then he's trying to solidify this stuff, doing it all himself. And then there was a fire went off in his apartment. So the fire brigade all had to turn up, and then the fire brigade come into his house, and the police are all there thinking, it's Montel Williams, what he's up to. It looks like one of that Breaking Bad scenes, basically. And Montel Williams is doing this. But it just goes to show for people out there to understand that from the medical aspect of marijuana and from a mental health aspect of marijuana, it's helping essentially millions of people. And in states and countries where it's become legal, now you've actually got doctors now starting to prescribe this rather than opioids. And this is one of the reasons why, if you dive deeper into this, why a lot of the pharmaceutical industry for years have been blocking marijuana and blocking reports and blocking information coming out there, because they don't want you to come off opioids and switch to some form of marijuana. And you don't only have to do it with the flower. There's a lot of obviously edibles that people can take it that way, so they can start to do it like that. What's your thought process on that aspect of the industry, Brandon?
So I feel when you speak about cannabis, of course, rule-wise, people, feel a very strong stigma about speaking about the medicinal aspects. But I also feel whenever you are speaking or even thinking about partaking cannabis, you can't deny the medicinal aspects of the plant. Legally you can't, they can throw out all these rules and say, oh, you can't say this, you can't label it this, you can't have budtenders talking about, how it's going to help someone's back if it's in a recreational shop. You need to get a license if you need all this medical stuff. Like, they put all these, hoops to jump through, when in reality, at the end of the day, I feel all cannabis consumption is medicinal, because you can't separate the two from the plant. It's one and the same. It's why people are consuming it. It's because it does something to the psyche of a person, but then also, with certain strains, especially on the indica side, there's a lot of very much, body effects. And so when you're speaking on affecting, those type of elements within a person's body, that would be considered medicinal. And so I feel, there is, because of, according to local laws, state laws, federal laws, there's a lot of tiptoeing and, mislabeling with everything. I feel these days everything's just being labeled, like how can we break something down to the smallest component? Whereas, you try, we've seen what's happened in that with cannabis, and I almost feel like people are just figuring out the ways. It's like almost trying to contain water in a vessel, and that whatever holes or leaks that vessel has, like that water is going to find a way out. And so I feel like it, to speak on the, how people are experimenting, with cannabis on their own body and usage, to extend their, value of life. For me, it just goes to show that, it is something that works, that it, there are reasons why there are so many hoops to jump for, because it does, establish a major threat to these huge, companies. Let's be real, like the real drug companies, the real drug dealers of the United States of America, like we've just been living 2 years under that in a sense, so and for me, like cannabis has been a lifesaver in a sense of that. Like I've been smoking this entire time and walking around people, me and you were talking, on the train and stuff, and like I have it, like bless up, like I'm healthy as can be, like whether that has some, like, so to speak on medicinal effects, like how can I be walking around, no mask throughout this whole entire time, quote unquote breaking rules, but I'm smoking, living healthy, living a quote unquote lifestyle that would be alternate to what, a typical doctor would prescribe. And like, I'm good. And so I feel, the plant has impacted and influenced that, lifestyle, where it is more, I guess when you say medicinal, it's more of, okay, well, if everything is healing, then think about living a life that is, rather than reactive to inflammation, like start eating and doing things that will alkalize you, that will neutralize acidic things, that will, will just be harmonic. And so one thing I really love about all of this is that, cannabis, NFTs, Web3, these are all areas that are literally tools that will literally break this civilization, this current civilization. I feel that's why we're in this kind of current downfall, of what's been constructed, what's been presented to all of us, because there are tools out there that can redesign civilization for the grandest betterment for all human beings and all beings. And, I think it comes down to energy, and so that's where I'm excited, to speak, more with you and be on this show, because I know you understand that, Alistair, what energy means. And so, yeah, I feel like these topics, they're separate and they have their own interest and wide applications, but when connected, that's like a super technology. That's like a super civilization type thing going on. And, from a creative perspective, I've been, dribbling and, taking my hand at, AI, renderings and designs, and, working with DALL-E too, and, Midjourney, and, these Google, AI algorithms, and the way that it can generate word or art from just words, and just descriptions, and how creatively descriptive you can be, is changing, I feel, the entire creative game. Even more so because it can create such detail so fast, which, of course, a lot of artists, I would say, if like you're an artist, yeah, there is this weird feeling like, wow, this machine just did 4 pieces of artwork, which would probably take me a month to do, each one, but it looks so good. On my Instagram, I've actually been sharing a lot of my AI generated artwork, and actually been creating them into NFTs. And so
let's share this. So this is your website. So how can we see these?
Yeah, so that image actually right there, that opening image, that was image designed image designed and generated by AI Midjourney. And the text prompt with that, if I can recall, was, a turquoise ancient Mayan gold jungle, ancient civilization, with, a few, I feel I definitely included a few other things, but yeah, that backed out to me in, less than a minute, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Amazing. I didn't even realize it was AI ways to generate art,
Oh yeah, I remember back when Deep Dream came out, and I was like, we've come so far since that. It's incredible.
Yes. So actually, all these pieces, besides the 2 temple ones, are earlier AI generated pieces that I actually made into NFTs that are listed on Rarible, and are actually made it a kind of like a small case user design experience / token experience to my agency business, where it's kind of like, these are, one of one NFTs, but then some of them have, business perks, like, hey, you'll get like, one of them will include, a few utilities. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. And so a lot of this was just a lot of me exploring in real time, how can I create, some cool AI generated artwork, but then also, with, the push of NFTs and artwork, and seeing, these amazing one of ones, but then also seeing amazing, crazy 10,000 piece collections. This was like my hand at wanting to do artwork at a certain level, still keeping an integrity and, design bar, and not making it look, like your typical cartoony, NFT, you'd find out there, and, really brand it. And so far it's been, the experience has been great. I feel throughout what I'm learning throughout the thing is just like anything is, the marketing aspect, like me speaking about the projects and tapping into the whole NFT world. What I'm finding is, you may have a big following in one industry, and people may be aware of you. That doesn't necessarily translate into, people buying your NFTs or, having an NFT community. So, that, of course, has been a learning curve for me. And of course, learning to how do I still be involved in what I'm currently doing, but then also have my hand in generating, collectible art pieces, and kind of have that interesting phase where I feel, and I kind of thought about it this morning, where I'm going from, a creative, design service based, individual agency to more of an artist, where I'm purely designing or creating, with no one giving me any input. It's purely me, and, using AI, it feels like I've gained like a whole creative, agency team behind me, which has been amazing. This one is actually probably one of my favorite pieces I've designed. So, or not even I designed, but I guess co-created with AI. It's weird to figure out that part conversation. But in this one, for April of this year, I just wanted to celebrate cannabis, and have an NFT aspect. So I made these like cannabis gods and goddesses, space gods and goddesses, kind of profile pictures, PFPs, one of ones, and overall the overall project under the brand, I called it Project Generate, standing for AI generated art. And then I did design a base image that was totally designed on my own. And then I fed it into the algorithm, and it, gave it the input, and it kicked back this. And I felt once I saw this, it just really, it just totally expanded my consciousness of like, wow, what I could really perceive and do with, this tool, respecting it, harmonizing with it, but then, taking it and then, still putting my traditional design aspects to it, like making a template, creating things. But then I could also see it as, where, wow, what if I got real cannabis plants and then placed it into these areas where these plants are growing, and kind of use it as like a roadmap and create a roadmap, and then, create that into like an AR, mask, design that I can then put on Instagram for stories or things like that. And so, overall, the entire NFT Web3 experience for me has just been one giant individual lesson in upskilling. of course, I think for everybody jumping into this, just learning things, learning, new applications, words, getting into communities, talking to individuals. It's
so
fun.
how does it work?
Time.
How does the AI generated art work for people out there to understand that this can actually happen? So how does it work?
So how does it usually, the typical way it works? So there's what you would call, these AI art engines. And so Google right now has probably some of the most advanced ones. There's one called DALL-E, DALLE 2. And that right now it's in beta. And so a lot of these tools are just like literally groundbreaking right now. They're, just testing out, they're like sending out, just like thousands of invites. I think some of them are just trying to get to like 1 million people right now, but they're also being, conscious of like, okay, how do we release this to, if it can, generate images, that anybody can input. And so in the simplest way to explain it, how these images are generated are by words. So meaning they're text prompts that an individual would type into, a block, an entry area, which then inputs it into a whole, AI neural network, which, a lot of them basically use the entire internet image library as their database. And, depending on, their calculations and backend applications, it perceives and puts a image together, mashes it up, and so it's crazy because it literally is I mean, for me, it's more like how creative can I be in my sentences and in my expressions and my, in creating and saying something, which could then give, the AI machine, that much more feedback to kick back and generate an image. So descriptive, to give you an example, let's say I want to create a space image sky with pyramids in front of me with starry background, hyper realistic photo cinematic, in the style of a 15th century oil painting, with gold frame, turquoise hints and neon lights. That statement right there, if I kick that into the machine and press enter, I just in the most recent one I'm working with, the one that you saw on my website, Midjourney, and if you pull it up, or whenever you get a chance, I believe it's just Midjourney AI.
I'm just going through them all. I don't know if this is on.
Midjourney.com.
And Instagram.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, and their Instagram.
I'm on it.
Wow.
Now head back to your website.
Cool.
So
actually, if you go back onto my Instagram, I want to show you just a little bit more of the Midjourney images. So at the very top, if you click on those two, and I have a panel of them. And so if you just scroll through the slides, it'll show you a few more examples. So that one I created, saying a quartz crystal, ancient neoclassical temple and a cosmic background with waterfalls and a brilliant starry night sky.
And it's changing color as well.
Yeah, so that's where I was able, from there, I took it into my own, back-end design thing, added in the project logo, and then, just for Instagram purposes, I made a transition from gray to show the color.
That's amazing, eh? Because a lot of people think of AI coming in, they're going to lose jobs, they're going to do this, but whereby it's like, it's going to open so many more possibilities with this.
It's, for me, it's interesting because I didn't really think of or took into account that, artificial intelligence would first impact creativity and design and art. You'd think people would be more like, oh, it's going to take the restaurant, Burger's job, and replace him. But, with my experience with this and seeing that, I'm like, if I got that printed up and on a canvas and then just went to an art museum or a person and been like, hey, I spent, I could totally fabricate a story, would they be able to tell between that or a machine? That's the crazy part. It's like, for me, like, this takes even just for me on a creative level, this just expands my entire creativity and branding, like, and design to a whole new world. I feel like I've never even experienced this amount of creativity in this short amount of time ever. And I think with that, there's a harmonizing element about it of like, okay, do I be afraid of this or do I harmonize it with it? Because it still depends on me inputting input. I have to give it a description, a thing, so if you click on the next few ones as well, just to show you, so that one, I definitely did a lot of temple ones. If you scroll through that one, go back. Yeah, on the mini slide.
Oh,
Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So like this one, it's like one. For me, it's like there's no way, like, as in my creative element, would be able to even design or think of that, mix all the colors, do that type of design detail. That would take me, gosh, I would say, weeks, if not a month. At least working on it consistently and coming back at it. Whereas, that generated that in less than 60 seconds. It's really crazy. And so for me, it's what I'm starting to discover. It's about how well and descriptive can I be in my descriptions to it, but then also how well versed I am in knowledge of art. And so, for example, with this one, it's, one thing, co-creating with Midjourney is, and all these AI art algorithm, computer pieces, is that it's taking, like, art styles and stuff as if that was like a paintbrush or tool. So for example, in this one, I was like, I want this done in in the style of a 16th century French oil painting, Monet. And so you can use basically your knowledge of artists and their style. This engine somehow, because it, taps into that database, of all these past artists, it can render these images, in those styles. And so it's like now, it's as if Crayola launched a bunch of crayons and the colors were, Van Gogh, Monet, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and every time you colored, it would paint in that style.
Yeah, for some reason, a little bit pixelated. That is totally amazing, eh? I wasn't even aware of that. Were you aware of that, Garrett?
Of what?
AI generated art?
Oh yeah, I've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
I just I have some other tools that I use. Let me think if I
you can bring some of your art up as well.
Yeah, because I it's while we're on the topic, I don't usually get a chance to talk about this stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
Bunch.
That's funny you mentioned, Garrett. You've been doing it for years. I actually looked at my timeline history today on Facebook, and I saw today, 7 years ago, I posted my first AI art when I was messing around with Google Deep Dream. And so I feel like today's like my 7-year anniversary of doing AI artwork. What? That's sick.
This is one I really like, and it goes into like the process a little bit,
Sure.
That's why I picked this one. I have a different one that I had it made into a diasec on my wall. I use no AI for that. I use ZBrush and Corel Painter primarily. Those
Beautiful.
are, so the face up here is completely done, in ZBrush Corel Painter. Behind is, that's LA, it's up from the hill in Whittier or whatever, looking down over LA, put through Deep Dream. So you're getting like the classic early Deep Dream type little temples and stuff. And then this is kind of like a fire put through the Impressionist one. But this was one I did a couple years ago, and I just think that it goes into my process a little bit. I use like a little bit of AI, I use a little bit of freehand, but I can attest that this stuff does take it takes hours and hours, and it's like you're putting like the face and stuff like this and getting it the way you want is probably it can be an hour or two of work, even with a tool that's guiding you through it kind of. But the AI stuff is minutes.
Yeah. No, it's really crazy because I feel it really just kind of disrupts what your traditional approach to, I guess like creating comps and creativity. Of course, I feel there's always going to be a place and time to do the traditional creative ways, but to get like 4 renditions and super high quality of what a potential scene could look like, I feel is what's going to be a really interesting game changer.
This is blowing my mind, basically, guys. You know what I mean? I spent hours bugging about in Canva, so it's like it's what you guys are doing here is like on the next sort of level. But like going along with the show, because we can sit and talk about this stuff all day. It was like coming back to like what's happening with cannabis, and probably one of the most topical thing. And I'm going to bring it up there. I'm going to do it as freedom of speech. Is currently the U.S. basketball player Brittany Greiner, who is held in Moscow right now. Unfortunately, it's the worst time probably ever to be caught with a little bit of cannabis in Russia because of the war with Russia and Ukraine, and she's getting used as a political pawn.
Now, but I didn't know that was the reason. I thought they just did it for a baseless, like for no reason whatsoever.
Oh wow! Yeah, it was over a vape pen.
Wow.
Was a vape pen that she'd left in her bag by accident, or she took it on purpose? They don't even know, do you? Because she's over there. So it's, but I saw Joe Biden's pushing for her to get released because of obviously the laws in the US. But then it brings up the bigger topic of, I think there's 45,000 individuals held in incarceration in America right now for cannabis possession. So, being involved in the Libertarian Party, working along beside Adam Kokesh when he was running for president, 100% legalization of cannabis is one of the key party policies, but it's also to push this thing of victimless crime. It's like the problem with people being in incarceration for cannabis possession, and for people out with the US to understand there's still in some states, there's still the 3 strikes and you're out. So if you're caught with cannabis, no matter how small it is, 3 times, you're automatically going to get a 12-month sentence. So you could be caught with 1 gram 3 times by the police, then you could be put incarcerated. And then and then it comes back to the race side of things as well, with the huge amount of African American community making up over 50% of these people who are incarcerated, be incarcerated for just pure small possession of cannabis. And it's for a victimless crime. There's no victim to this crime. But we're suddenly putting people in jail for 12 months. And if you get caught again, there's people in jail for 5 years because they've been caught when they've been released, and then again caught with cannabis. And because they've broken their parole, suddenly they get a 5-year sentence for this. So you just think, and that brings back to the bigger picture of the government. We were talking about pharmaceutical companies, but you've got privatized prisons in America. who are getting paid essentially millions of dollars from the government to have the place packed. And, you know, it's like a hotel. If I'm running a hotel, I want it to be at 95% occupancy rate. Doesn't matter what the occupant is in for, as long as they're taking up the cell room, I'm getting paid my money. And this is another thing that they talk about a lot with cannabis, is that why is the incarceration rate so high? And then even in some states like California, where it's suddenly legal for cannabis, there's still people in jail in California right now who've been incarcerated before it became legal for possession, which just seems like madness, you know, especially when you see this young woman over in Russia right now who's basically held for, you know, as you said, a vape pen. What are your thoughts on it, guys?
Another good one to interject here is a little free Ross. If you want to bring up freeross.org, we should have Lynn Ulbricht, Ross's mother, on for one of our episodes, because I know somebody that talks to her. But Ross is doing double life for the Silk Road. It was mainly victimless crime. You know, it was, I don't think, you know, it's like obviously people were making their own choices and stuff there, but I like to kind of put that out there when we're on this topic that, you know, just the more people that know about it, hey, you know, maybe there's someone out there that can fight and help this young man get clemency from the president. But
so tell us a bit more about that then, Garrett, you know?
Yeah, so that I mean, that was a very early Bitcoin. Bitcoin's killer app really was the Silk Road, which was a, you know, kind of it was a drug marketplace. There was a lot of drugs sold in that marketplace, a lot of questionable things, but it can be argued that it was, you know, as a website owner, it's like, how much did this guy really do to, you know, it's, you know, he didn't really hurt anybody himself. I understand, like he was set up for some stuff. Like they set him up to make him look like a bad guy. There was obviously some things if you look into the case, but at the end of the day, I mean, he was, you know, I think this was almost 10 years ago now, but you know, he didn't deserve what he got. He, you know, I get it. It's like if they would have given him some time, but like double life with no chance of parole is ridiculous. So I do like to interject that. It's a big libertarian thing. Ross himself is a big libertarian. And he also does some fantastic art. If you're into NFTs, if you go to freeross.org, he has NFTs made from his drawings in prison. And he's a phenomenal artist, phenomenal artist. These are worth way more than they're probably selling for, but you know, check it out. But
I'll bring up this a bit since we're talking about it right now. So here it is here. So
yeah,
Ross will soon start his 10th year in prison.
Yeah, he's been in prison a long time, and you know, it's everything on this site is valid. You know, it's at this point, I remember the day Ross was arrested, and I can't believe it was 10 years ago. You know, I remember the whole story. His mother is just the sweetest woman. She's very nice, and she's super involved in Bitcoin and libertarian stuff. If you ever end up at, you know, those type of events, Ross actually spoke, I think, at Bitcoin 2021. They got him on the phone, and he was actually speaking at the conference. But there's no doubt that he was a historical figure, and it kind of reminds me of you know, like he did far less than like there was that guy that they did the Johnny Depp movie Blow on, George Young. And that guy, I think it was a similar situation where he had like some super long sentence that got commuted, but I don't think it was life. It was like 40 years, but they commuted it. And it's like, I mean, with Ross, it essentially puts the situation where it has to be the president pardoning him. And
so for people there, so it just says he's a first-time offender, all non-violent charges, essentially created a website called Silk Road where people were using it to exchange a variety of goods. and including on it some cannabis, small amounts of cannabis.
Yeah, there were, I
So
would say
he just built the website, basically. That's all he did. He just ran the
he just put up a website, basically. I mean, there was, and, I give him some credit because there was a point where you could sell other things on there, and he eventually took those down. He moderated it. So, he's definitely a big figure to, the classic Ron Paul era libertarians. I mean, I could only, it's President Trump was handing out pardons, and I was hoping that, Ross was going to get one. But I guess the president thought Lil Wayne and Kodak Black were a little bit better choices. Kodak's going back, I think, too. I saw him in the news the other day. But yeah, I guess I've spoken my piece here for your eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you look at some of the other sentencing disparity that's in there as well. So this is people who were sentenced on his website. So
yeah, there's people that they did the same thing. Like the guy that made Silk Road 2, there were people that cloned the website, did the same exact thing.
Released no sentence. Yeah,
they're out. But Ross, they got him with like the kingpin charge. He was being held at like a something Florence. It's like AXT Florence or something like that, right next to El Chapo. It's like, you look at this guy, he's not El Chapo. I mean, El Chapo did some really bad stuff. This guy isn't El Chapo.
Yeah, it's because it was
all sentence.
Yeah, it's like that's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's double life, and it says like his sentence wasn't even ruled on by a jury to justify the sentence.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it wasn't. I tell you, if we get Kokesh in as president, this guy he'll get his pardon. There's his mom. We should invite her on because she would be a great.
There's his mom there as well. Yeah. Let's reach out and get her to come on. That would be so interesting, actually, Gary. It's just like. And then again, it's just like it's like a guy's built a website, victimless crime, and suddenly he's in jail for 40 years. It's just
double life plus 40 years. That's the sentence.
So it's double life plus. I thought
double life plus 40 years.
Double life plus 40-year sentence.
That's crazy.
That's just like it's just like that's unbelievable. But again, it comes back to this thing of whereby would the incarceration rate in the US is obviously higher than everywhere else in the world, So is the US much more dangerous, or is it the fact that we have privatized prisons here compared to other places? Because other places, if you start going into like Netherlands and all these sort of places, they are so forward thinking in terms of rehabilitation of prisoners, especially non-violent prisoners. They get these people basically straight back in the community, operating within the community and helping out. They go to old folk homes, they help people with mental health problems. They try and do ways of, and especially a lot of people who've got drug addiction and they end up in prison because of petty crime, trying to feed a habit. They look at it completely different. Whereby here it's just basically as another person to be put into the prison system here. If you're running a privatized prison, you want customers. It's as simple as that. There's no other way around it. And there's no other explanation why America should have such high incarceration rates, especially when you're comparing it to places like Europe and stuff like that. So it's and it's the amount of money that these prisons make. If people start to drill into it, it's absolutely crazy. So they want long-term prisoners. And then you've got Brittany out there who's in Russia for essentially, as Brandon said, a vape pen. It's like, what's she looking at right now? It's just like, and it comes back to this sort of freedom of speech, people shutting things down, just as we go through different parts of what I was wanting to speak about today. If I want, and I know this is going a little bit off topic because I like talking about the golf and that. I don't know if you're a big golfer, Brandon, but we'll bring it up anyway because it's topical. But again, it's not a golfer anyway, but he has to speak about it each week with me. So basically, it's So this comes back to this guy who was like captain of the European Ryder Cup team. So his name's Henrik Stenson. He used to be good. There's no denying it. He used to be ranked number 2 in the world about 15 years ago. He actually won the British Open, but now he's 46 years old, ranked 171 in the world. I think that's actually been generous to the guy. He was European Ryder Cup captain, and then he's just been signed up to the LIV Golf Series. If you're not aware of that, this is the golf series that is run by the Saudi government that's been paying huge amounts of money. So they've basically paid this guy $40 million upfront fee to join their group, when essentially the guy's, you know, I wouldn't say his career's over, but, you know, he's missed, I think, 7 of the last 9 cuts he's played in. He's, you know, he's shooting super high, and to get this huge amount of money, and it's basically the guy's been brought in to do another sort of stab to the heart of the current golfing regime. But what I want to talk about is, how does this influence other governments coming in? So they're talking about this sports washing right now. So why is the Saudi government so keen on setting up a golf league, investing into sport? And it just comes back to, you know, the one article that keeps coming up again and again is, you know, there's Joe Biden. I wonder if we can just actually watch him going into Jeddah. You'll see us do his fist pump with the, it's in the New York Post, by the way. Sorry, guys. It's like not the highest newsworthy publication. But really it comes back to this Khashoggi, who was assassinated. He was brought into the Saudi embassy. He was thinking he was actually getting a marriage visa when he was coming in, but he was just taken out by their sort of their version of the, you know, SES in the UK, CIA here, and then the guy was just basically taken out. So suddenly Saudi Arabia has got this, and this becomes this worldwide thing of going on in terms of Saudi Arabia essentially using sport to hide away the fact that they are doing things in their country that the rest of us don't agree on. And suddenly they're investing into this massive golf league where they've got the best golfers in the world coming in, and they're refusing to ask any questions on these subject areas. And then you bring in Donald Trump, who is obviously a big friend with Saudi Arabia, coming in and telling all the golfers to take the money from the LIV Golf League or pay a big price, because these guys are taking over anyway, whether you like it or not. And then you've got the 9/11 victims, the family victims are urging Trump. Now, bear in mind, of the 8 courses that they're doing the golf competition on, 5 of them are Trump's courses. So he's obviously going to be a little bit biased in terms of where the golf should be played. But it comes back to this thing of, oh, wait a minute, you've got the last president of America, essentially giving the Saudi Arabian government a pass on taking out, and we're not just talking about that journalist. There's multiple journalists in Saudi Arabia that have gone missing in the last 5 years. Some of them saying very little things against the regime. If you look at Russia as well, I'll just bring up another article that's sort of bringing in that's interesting, is here's a Russian TV journalist who protested the war on her Instagram, and then she was arrested. So she's automatically been arrested, and she's been held for discrediting the actions of the army of Russia. You know, that's basically, you're charged on that. So who knows what's going to happen to her? But there was a recent politician in Russia as well that spoke against the economics of the war and how it's going against the interest of the Russian people, suddenly arrested and put in a jail for essentially 7 years. So we are now in America right now. We push freedom of speech the whole time, which is one of the most important things. But then you've got 2 countries, and there's a third country, just to bring it up before I open the floor to you guys. And this was in today's Fox News. Nike, LeBron, and the NBA silent as China's crackdown on the LGBT community continues. And for people to understand what's really happened out there is there was a couple of Chinese students decided to, put up the LGBT flag, the rainbow flag, automatically getting brought into the universities, losing their essentially bursaries that they're getting to come in, and threatened in terms of potential incarceration or anything for if they ever bring out those flags again. So what are your guys' thoughts on this whole process of freedom of speech in sport and politics?
Well, you got to have it. You got to have the freedom of speech, but it's very difficult in these authoritarian regimes to, for them to ever feel comfortable with that. Who knows how long it could be till they have it, but I would say China before, Saudi Arabia, or, I feel like there is some level of freedom of speech in Russia, but
apart from that woman, a journalist who did an Instagram post. So it's like, but it's something you have here. So it's something you're entitled to hear, and people need to understand that. And then suddenly we're looking at the other two superpowers and potentially third superpower in terms of oil production. And you've got Biden going over there, fist pumping the guy, essentially the crown prince, where it was only a year and a half ago saying, you can't be doing this to our journalists. We should be basically holding you accountable. But because we need his oil, we'll give him a fist pump and pat on the back and go forward from there. So now you've got this emerging in terms of sport, politics, and then the strangest thing is you've got the US political sides, whether it's Democrat or Republican, siding with outside governments because they dislike their own opposition party more, which is even stranger to me looking from the outside in. What are your thoughts on all this, Brandon?
Well, overall, I think there's definitely, I feel just kind of taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, there's just a huge cultural changing of the guard happening. And I think with all these technologies, as much as, we can use it for creative, benevolent means, a lot of people see it as power and control. InfoWars is a real deal. And I think when it comes down to freedom of speech and stuff, there's always been just countless examples of, power structures, really wanting to exercise and flex their muscle on other beings, and I feel, in this, new, area we're in, there is kind of like a reformation of civilization happening. And I think, ultimately, I feel what it comes down to is America is not the power country it was a few years. And we are now living in like the after days of that. It's, for me, I think, a lot of it does come down to, the freedom of speech and tolerance, and, having strong boundaries, and, what can happen, when boundaries are weak, and, whether that be physical, mental, spiritual, all kinds of boundaries. And so, I think in a sense, there's the freedom of speech in a sense of expressing yourself. But I think the bigger question is, for me, just being a very, spiritual, meditative type of person is, and looking within is like, well, if I have the freedom of speech, is my speech edifying and benevolently harmonizing with the environment, or a person or a thing, rather than putting quote unquote curses on it, like kind of going back to the AI thing, words are powerful, like let's say words matter, and so it's like for the first time ever, I'm seeing it's like, even, if we go back to, if we look at a religious example, the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, like it's crazy, like how, just kind of like wrapping it all up, it all connects, because I think there is, with the vocabulary and with the freedom of speech, there is a changing of the guard of civilization, because I think we're about to have, new expressions of creative expressions and ways of being human, and also, what is our place in the cosmos. And so I think with all of that, there is a lot of conflicting ideas and traditions, and a lot of evolution happening. And yeah, it's crazy watching it in real time.
It's information overload as well.
It really is. Like I think, even for myself, it's not so bad where it's like I literally have to take an hour a day to, sit outside and meditate. Like I've made that like a part of my overall being, because it is, that, oversaturated. And of course, being a creative who's on the computer, designing on the computer, almost, 25 hours, 8 days a week. It's, gosh, yeah, it really can affect one's health and overall mental, being. And so, yeah, for me to wrap it up, I do have a call I have to jump on here in a few minutes. But
yeah, no problem. I was just we're gonna wrap it up here quickly.
Just wrap it up, I guess, with the topics. I want to say, cannabis, creativity. I feel.
I was going to show you quickly one of my NFTs actually. This is we usually finish the show off in the last minute, so I'll bring up one of my ones, Brandon. So we'll bring it. Obviously, now I know about the AI stuff. They're going to improve quite a lot. But basically, I've been reading the Bible a bit, brought up with the Bible, the good book, as they call it back in Scotland. And then since we had that conversation on the train, I started to read more. And, so what I've started to read by people out there is God, actually, whether God wrote the Bible or not, he speaks about weed and the herb a lot in the Bible, a lot more than abortion. I don't actually find anything about that in the Bible. A lot more than a lot of things that people are trying to push on you here. But if they actually bother to open the book, here's a couple of beauties that I found anyway. And I've got multiple ones, don't worry. Every day I'll pop into the Bible and see what else has God been writing about cannabis and why it should be legal. So this quote here is in Genesis. That's the first book of the Bible, most important one because it's first. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed. So there you go, people. It's in the Bible. Why is it not legal in places like Texas? Ted Cruz. I thought you were supposed to read the Bible,
Right?
Yeah, he's never reading the Bible, that guy, if he's not read this part of it, Absolute blasphemy for you. You're only going one place, Ted, and that's going straight down there, That's what we think of the Ted Cruz people. Look, here's another one just before we hang up, because I know everyone needs to go. Look at this one. This one's even better. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed. Genesis again.
That's a good one.
No, it's in the beginning of the Old Testament, everybody. And then there's God, by the way. And God's black, because Jesus was black. So if God made Jesus in his image, then obviously God would have to be black. Coming from a white man that's learned the Bible in the north of Scotland, took me a long time to understand that, So, and that's the Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, and then he's giving God a seed, That was what that represents there. So that they're my NFTs, but now I know about the AI technology. They'll be improving quite a bit going forward.
Yes, well, I look forward to seeing that. And Alistair, I want to just say much appreciation for inviting me onto the show.
No problem at all. It's good.
Wonderful time to chat, Garrett. Pleasure to meet you and have a conversation. And would love to be a guest in the
Oh
future.
yeah, we'll get you on there as well, and it was good for everybody for tuning in to Boom It's on the Blockchain, learning a little bit about NFTs, the cannabis industry. We always like to go a little bit political and speak about freedom of speech. I'm a great believer in everyone should be allowed to say what they like, whether you like it or not. You can always just tune them out. I just don't believe in this shutting people out just because they've got an opinion. So
Exactly.
I think that's important. Everyone's opinion accounts. So. Well, thanks again, Brandon, for coming on. Thanks again, Garrett, for making it here. Thanks for everyone out there who's tuned into the show. You've been watching Boom It's on the Blockchain. Thanks very much. Have a nice day.